Welcome to one and all. Welcome. It's to the point for today, Thursday, the 8th day of May. Welcome to our listeners and viewers. Once also those of you via our social media platforms, Facebook page, YouTube channels. It's to the point. I'm your host, GT. And this morning, it's, on Thursdays, we usually host various departments within the RGPF. And we do have the Community Relations Department with us this morning. We have, of course, WPC Kutain with us this morning and Corporal Reddit with us. Let me say good morning to both of you and... welcome.
Thank you very much.
Nice to have you back. I should just say nice to have you back.
Yeah. Family at this point.
Yeah. It's like a regular thing. Yeah. So everybody all right?
Yes, we're good. Can't complain.
All right. Well, yes, I would say so. I kind of feeling you'll be a not too hot of a day today. Last 2 days was like out of the ordinary.
Really
yeah. This morning I cannot say. It's my kind of day today. All right. So our focus today, of course, our conversation focus today is relatively to, of course, something that a lot of folks are concerned about. We're talking about fake news, misinformation, and how folks will respond to this kind of information when it's thrown out there. Because, it's the kind of thing that people absorb easily.
Right.
News that are not correct. And the third-party sources and some of how they gather it from, and then they spell it. I had somebody tell me something the other day that I was actually there when and they will give me a different story that I was actually there. So it's kind of weird. So I'm saying this morning when I'm reading, and I'm saying, hey, actually what we're going to talk about is something I experienced. Someone told me something, and I was actually there. And they give me a different story. And I'm pretending I know what's going on, right? But I'm getting a totally different story. Yeah. And they actually heard it from someone and developed their own story. So that's where you say that misinformation comes around there and then creates a whole different scenario. Now, if we were to start a conversation this way this morning, because we're talking about fake news, and I'm sure there's a listener of you or they've been hearing that talk. We hear it from, of course, the outer world who talk about it a whole lot. Fake news.
Right.
And I've asked a question, what is fake news? How would you create that explanation for me or other listeners of yours out there? Fake news.
Right. So fake news, as it says, it clearly outlines it in the topic. It's fake news. It's inaccurate. Right? When we talk about fake news, we can separate it under two sections.
Yeah.
Misinformation and disinformation. These are two terms regularly thrown around a lot, like a cricket ball. A lot of people just use them interchangeably. They don't understand what they mean. But the main difference between misinformation and disinformation is the intent behind the message being portrayed or displayed on social media or WhatsApp, any social media platform. So with misinformation, the person didn't intend to put out the fake news. It wasn't deliberate. They probably got the news from an unreliable source, and maybe in the interest.
Sounds so good not to be true.
Right. They just pass it on, and they are happy to be the one to disseminate that information. With this information now, they intently manipulate that message for whatever ulterior motives they may have, right? And it is far-reaching in the communities, in society, because it can cause persons don't understand when they intentionally spread that's not disinformation or they intentionally spread false information. It doesn't only affect others, but it affects your credibility also. And persons may blank you.
Yeah, you what they say about GT boy, and totally is not what it is.
And it affects a lot of different areas in society. For example, just going off the limb a bit, climate change, politics. And
everything's affected.
In our area specifically, policing, it really affects how people perceive the information that is being.
And that leads me to my next question: the concerns from the RGPF, especially in community relation, in terms of that fake news that get disseminated on a daily basis. How is it affecting the overall communication for the RGPF in general?
Well, let's use this example. I post me and my girlfriend standing up together, and in the caption I said, "I have a bomb girlfriend." Now, the individual who wants to share the information, this information, removes girlfriend at the end. So what do you see as a caption? I have a bomb. And when we share that information, a lot of things happen on the end for policing. Whenever we get something like that, a threat like that, it means that we have to then send out a lot of resources to respond to something that seems as though it is an imminent threat. It is going to happen in that moment. So you have a lot of resources being pulled into the wrong direction. That's one. Two, you then cause a state of panic. You have individuals who would then see that information and they will get alarmed. They would start to do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do. They would probably start to buy things. They would rush from a particular area. They will stop speaking or start moving all hysterically, simply because that information reaches to them. And then what you would have persons trying to calm the situation down, as well as, let's look at three. What you would then see happening is you would see, which is probably what happens most times when you get wrong information and policing, you will get a lot of persons calling in, a lot of persons sharing the information.
They start reacting now.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it is not just one pool of three persons knowing no. Because back in the day, if a fight was happening up the road, probably just a pocket of persons in that area knew that there was a fight taking place. Now you have persons all over the world, in the States, Japan, China, everywhere now tuning into this. And then it causes persons to then start calling, start reaching out, and it creates a whole set of panic, not just for the persons, but also the RGPF. Because then we have to pull a lot of things to make sure that we address that situation. Yeah. So in short, what it does is it creates an unnecessary situation where a lot of resources, a lot of time, and a lot of effort has to be pushed. And then you have communication that has to go out to kind of calm the situation down. And as a Grenadian, sometimes if something gets stuck in your head that is that, it's really hard to try and change the narrative thereafter. Yes.
Even though you get the right information after.
That's correct.
What comes first stays there.
It's a very damaging thing that a lot of people don't realize that they do. For example, I've seen many instances where accidents would have happened in the past. Mm-hmm. A lot of persons who put out that the persons involved in the accidents were deceased without verifying or looking for the reliable source to get that information. Now, you have to think when you put out information, how does it affect the family of the person that you're putting out that information? You know, as Antonia would have, as Ms. Coutain would have said, you are inciting a level of panic in society. And would you want that for yourself? You know, think about the person on
think of you in that particular circumstances now.
Exactly.
I want to expand a wee bit on the misinformation and the disinformation part of this, because that is also concerning a whole lot. You know, you spoke about it briefly, but I want you to break it down a little bit before. Give me more emphasis on the let's focus on the misinformation first, and then we go across into disinformation. How these two coming together in someone giving you that misinformation and disinformation, how does that affect the overall communication factor of everything?
Right. Now, sometimes you tend to be a little more lenient with person with the misinformation, as it was not intentional. Mm-hmm. But as we always say, ignorance of the law is not an excuse.
So that's like they lie, technically. I mean, you gotta be frank. They lie.
The misinformation. You see that you just reposted.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and a lot of people do it innocently. But we want to encourage persons to be a bit more investigative in terms of putting out your information. You know, look at the source, look at the links, look at the pictures. There's a lot of, and Ms. Coutain can speak to this, a lot of AI manipulated content out there now.
Yeah, can they put up GT and hear me saying it?
Exactly.
Use AI generated. And they say, well, yeah, GT said it's true. You understand?
And it has a direct correlation with, manipulating people.
Yeah.
You understand? So, and scams is what I was looking for. It has a direct correlation with scams. If you have that investigative mindset, you are able to avoid scams. You're able to look at the source. You're able to look at the contents. Does it make sense? Is this too good to be true?
Why would this individual come out and speak about that?
Exactly. And if it's too good to be true, it's probably
it's not true.
And we see that often with all. I think the most recent one we had was with Digicel or something. I think it was Digicel, where they were saying they were giving out different things, and that's a classic. That's a classic example of misinformation. Because someone shared it, and then you reshared, and everybody begins sharing that same information over and over and over and over again.
No, and we have to encourage persons. You need to think critically. I mean, you get a message from a Nigerian prince for $10 million and his rich father died.
How he knew me?
You need to be a little bit more investigative and think critically, because a lot of persons have lost a lot of their savings, a lot of, look at the recent...
Yeah,
the Creative Alliance that was out recently. And, we want to encourage persons to be a bit more mindful and think before you act,
Right, and one thing I just wanted to interject with here is that recently we had a situation where someone would have hacked an individual's profile, and they were going around saying a lot of untrue things about different persons that they were posting on that individual's profile. And persons were of the view that the RGPF isn't doing anything and they aren't responding and stuff like that. But if you understand how misinformation works, when we reached out to individuals and we said, don't share, we're working on it behind the scenes, don't share, don't interact. It is not because we're trying to just leave that profile up there for them to continue doing what they're doing, but we're trying to stop misinformation from taking place while we investigate behind the scenes the culprit behind the using of the fake profile. And what you would see happening from misinformation, you would see a lot of persons getting upset. You would see a lot of persons targeting the individual who was probably not responsible. In this case, was not responsible for the page. Yes. So because Corporal Redhead here hacks my profile, he's now Antonia, and he goes around saying a lot of things about Antonia. Then you would see how by persons sharing and sharing, misinformation then causes persons to see me on the street, and they'll be like, isn't she the person that's been saying all of these things? And they would want to give me, in layman's tongue, a blowout.
Exactly.
And then that now pushes things from the cyber world into the physical world. And so we need to take all of these things into consideration, because misinformation could be just as detrimental as the person who created the content in the first place, the fake content in the first place.
And just to add to that, as you said, misinformation and disinformation is even worse. Yeah. Because you sit down and intentionally created fake news to manipulate persons, and one of the serious implications that it has, especially with our area of work in the police force, is that it can impede an investigation. You deliberately alter information based on a case or something that is going on, and because of that, witnesses may not come forward.
Yeah. I no longer want to speak about that, because they say, well, GT's the one going to talk to the police.
Right.
Exactly. That's for an example, which I may have nothing to do with that.
Right, exactly.
Or I may have been wrong, but because now I am calling inspector of this inspector name or that inspector name, because you see me have some form of communication with that person, you think, well, I'm spilling information. I mean, if it's for the right purposes, it's okay. Right. You understand? It's okay, but then it's concerning. No, why does it matter that folks not do that? Why does it matter that folks not do? Why it matters that folks not do that? So disseminate the fake news, given all that misinformation and disinformation. Why does it really matter that folks don't do that at all?
Right. So if we're going back, and we just to make sure that the audience is clear, the Mr. Redhead in my scenario would be the person who is sharing disinformation, because the information that he's sharing on my profile is completely fake. Everyone else who then shares that information after the fact is the persons who would be causing the misinformation. Now, why, and we can go back to that same scenario as why it is that this is dangerous. It's a dangerous habit. Because we've seen in real life that because of misinformation and disinformation, persons have lost their jobs. We have persons sending fictitious information about persons' health status. And depending on the industry that you're working in, if I know that person has a communicable disease or a non-communicable disease, which one is non-communicable? Non-communicable disease? Right. If I have a disease that I can pass on to other persons while handling food, then obviously that's a concern for the business. And we've seen persons lose their jobs over that. We've seen persons attacked physically because of that. We've seen persons being slandered on social media and in person as a result of that. We see persons' reputation completely tarnished because we would have picked up a piece of what we seemed was juicy news and we shared it without any regard for who it's going to affect. So it does affect the individual, and it can also affect the person person sharing, because depending on the content that you share, depending on the words that you use, you can be charged for sharing and for posting that information, depending on what it is that you share.
Now, I'm sure there are always signs when this information has been disseminated. There are signs that relates to it and says, well, because of it's that or because of that, you know it's not real. What are those signs an individual could look forward for? Especially when it comes to information. There's always that little sign. There's always something about it that seems, as you mentioned before, seems too true not to be true. It seems too good to not to be true about it. Give me those signs. Give me those signs of that.
So, firstly, I would say is the headlines. Now, normally when people disinformate, is that a word? Or share disinformation or misinformation, the headlines are very catchy. It's to capture your eyes.
Yes.
And people in the news do it too, but sometimes it's outrageous. So false news stories often have a catchy headline, and it's in all caps. With exclamation
Sending
points.
out bold so that you get your attention. It's a way of getting your attention.
Right,
correct. And then when you look at the content, it's completely different to what the headline says.
Different.
I know, and someone will spread that headline. Oh, I'm seeing
without reading.
WPC contain this, and that's where they leave it right there. Just the headline. But then when you go into the detail of the content of it, you realize this doesn't make sense.
And if you read it and you say, "Oh my God, this is unbelievable," it probably is unbelievable.
All right.
Should be. Also, you should look closely at the link of where the source that it has come in. So a phony or lookalike link may be a warning sign of false news, right? Many false news sites mimic authentic news sources, so they might take something from GBN and they might add a little thing to it, and you can. That's why it's important to look at the news too.
So true.
So persons out there, I would encourage you to look at the news, look at GBN, of course, and MTV.
I agree.
Make sure that you're getting the news from a correct source. Investigate the source. Ensure that the story is written by
credible individuals.
Right? Another one is watch for unusual formatting. Many false news sites have misspellings and they have awkward layouts. I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying this, but a lot of the malicious persons, sometimes they're not too bright with what they're putting out. They tend to have a lot of misspelled words and
grammatical errors and so forth in between.
Persons that are valuable contributors to society, they don't sit down and make false news on persons. So,
keep that in mind.
Exactly. So persons that are doing it, you need to keep that in mind. You need to be valuable contributors in society. You need to want better for society.
Except the individual is a scammer too, because they're educated scammers. Huh?
That is
exactly.
Who will put that thing out there really, really good for you in order to get what they want from it, except it's been done in a form of a scam.
Exactly. And usually it is for some form of ulterior motive. They have something to gain from it at the detriment of another person. Another way you can look out for disinformation is inspect the dates. I've seen a lot of videos circulated, and the dates have been from years ago, 5 years ago, and persons, you would be amazed. That post,
and you're into it now like if it was yesterday, right?
Yes, the amount of shares that post has, you would think that nobody took the time to inspect the date of that post to see that post was 20 years ago.
And in the social media world, we'll call that hate click. Normally what happens, and you see that even in our line of work, you would see there was a 12 seconds video of a police officer interacting with a civilian in a way that the public may not have been entirely pleased about. And that happened probably back in 2001. And because of a recent scenario that happens that is also not as pleasing, you will see that video resurfacing yet again. And it's just to help push their agenda, which is to cause a lot of hatred, a lot of mistrust from the public. So something you should also look out for when you're trying to figure out if something is fictitious is you should try to figure out what is the intent behind the individual doing the post. If their intent, or if because of their post you're feeling to break the law, you're feeling to commit acts that you wouldn't ordinarily commit as a law-abiding citizen, then you should think then probably that is not something that is legit.
Right.
You're right.
Another thing you can do is to look out for other sources. So I would see GBN drop this. Well, I won't use GBN because GBN is usually a very credible source. You will see someone drop some news, and what you should do is probably look at GBN, look at the Royal Grenada Police Force website, look at MTV. Like for example, I saw a news snippet. I don't usually look at other news. I like Paki Sharma. I don't know if you know her. She's an Indian. She brings out the news really well. And I saw a news snippet with someone that I don't know at all. So when I saw the news that, well, this is common knowledge, that India attacked Pakistan yesterday or the day before.
Yes.
I went immediately to Paki Sharma and I was able to verify that did happen.
That is legitimate.
Exactly.
It did happen.
Yes.
So that's a really good way
very good one
to verify that the information is correct.
All right. We due for a break. Let's take when we come back. We still have a whole lot more to cover. Stay with us, folks. To the point. We'll be right back after the break. Don't touch it out.
Get ready, Grenada. The Maggie King of the Grill is back and bigger than ever. On Saturday, June 7th, Monroe's playing field transforms into the ultimate battleground for grill masters. Think you got what it takes? Then fire up those grills and show your skills. Registration closes Friday, April the 11th. So don't miss your chance to compete for that sizzling prize and bragging rights. It's food, fun, and flavor, all powered by Maggie. To register, call 407-8458. Maggie King of the Grill, where flavor rules. See you there.
Grenada, the time has come. It's the big showdown in the first ever Classic Lighted and the Communal Credit Union Invitational 2025. Come witness the Royal Grenada Police Force and His Majesty's prison officers take on the nation's busmen and women in an epic 4x1 relay. Then it's Flow versus DG Cell. And don't miss out, Nawasa, who will be flooding Grenlec in the ultimate relay. All this and more, May 17th and 18th. At the Kirani James Athletic Stadium. Adults $30, children $15. Season passes are available. It's a showdown like no.
Again, listeners, welcome back. Viewers, to the point, Classic Radio, GBN TV, and we're talking fake news, misinformation, of course, this morning, and it's really a constructive conversation. Let me say welcome back, of course, to WPC Kutin and Corporal Redder with us this morning, of course, helping to get that bit of information out this morning. I want us to focus a wee bit. Social media platforms. It's one of the key ways that folks are getting information out these days. It's not like before when your neighbor would put your head out the window and say, Corporal Redder this, WPC that,
right.
Talk and make up a lie about you through the window or stuff like that. Now, by a click of a finger, anyway, someone could be any part of the world and just spill information and spill dirt, as some folks would say about information. Now, the role of the social media platforms in terms of individuals disseminating these kind of information. How concerned should we be about that? How much attention should we put into in knowing that what has been disseminated is not always the correct thing?
So it is really important for persons to actually pay attention to where the information that they're receiving is coming from. And we're not saying this just because we want to drive persons to a particular place as opposed to somewhere else. Because sometimes, based on one act, it can have a number of repercussions to a number of different persons. And sometimes you would see, for example, something would happen at 1:01 p.m. and the RGPF would not release something until 4 p.m. And that is not because we didn't know at 1 p.m. the incident took place, but we have to fact check. A lot of the times when persons report news, they report it, well, are attempting to, they report it from one person's perspective. So they hear what Antonia has to say about what happened, but with every story, there's yours, there's mine, and there's what is the truth. And so before we push that out into society, because once it's out there, it's very hard to take back. We make sure that the information that you get is fully authentic. And so this is actually a plead to persons who are getting into that line of work, persons who want to give information. Ensure that you fact check everything first, because once something gets out there, as we rightfully said, it goes throughout the world. Everyone now have access to that. And as the corporal said in the beginning, it wouldn't be nice for you to say that this person would have been severely injured in an accident, and then 2 minutes after you have to come back and say, oh no, that wasn't true, and then 3 minutes after you have to say, okay, yes, they were actually injured, and then no, you come back and say, oh no, there was actually 4 persons injured. So now there's a lot of conflicting information over that one particular situation, and now you have the public fully confused as to what is taking place. And that is what also causes these little feuds that we have on social media. You will see one person saying no, one person saying yes, and then you have persons who is diehard for a particular individual, so they're on their team no matter what. And so you always find persons with different pockets of misconception, and you do not want the public to be living in that particular way, because it does have a number of repercussions.
Because you know, social media influencers these days plays a major role in information.
I was just about to get into that.
You know, but you know, they influence a lot, and they receive their information also. And sometimes the information that they receive may not be credible. Exactly. But they, you know, there's a saying, they want to be the first of us.
And that is it.
Or they want to be that individual breaking the news.
It's all about boosting the views, the attention, the cloud and fame. Cloud and fame. you know, that's
cloud and fame.
Cloud and fame.
The thing is that the reality is we are in the future now. In the past, the power used to be behind a podium, and the masses would come physically, and they could exert whatever control they could have at that time. No. An 18-year-old or a 17-year-old, you don't even have to know the age of the person. They can be 12 for all you know. They can garner enough views and enough support, and the power that they have to be able to influence and manipulate people would leave you astounded. You know, and I want to implore on social media personnel, content creators, persons that are disseminating news that have a large following. You have a fundamental and great responsibility for everything that you post. You can influence lives, you can change lives, you can destroy lives, you can help persons. I've noticed a lot of persons are very helpful on their platforms. Kudos to you. But those that are inciting violence, which is a crime, using threatening language, which is a crime, you know, those that are defaming persons, you know, it can go a long way, as Ms. Kuten was saying earlier. It can affect you not getting a job. You can lose your job. There are persons and they are totally innocent, and because of that information being spread, you have a lot of power. And people, they are aware of that. And you know, get rid of the personal feelings. A lot of people, they have the power, they use it for personal means to get to other persons that may have done them wrong in the past. You know, forgive and move on. And let's work together to improve society, as I said before. If you don't take anything from today's conversation, let's be valuable contributors of society and improve society. Let us work together and make society better for everyone.
You know, another idea, another thought that's come to mind in relation to this conversation. How does the law play into this right now? In terms of the same social media influencers and these people disseminating this information, knowing that it's not true and stuff like that, it all goes back to even individuals calling the radio station and saying stuff that, yes, may have some credibility, but sometimes, as you said, there's always three sides to a story.
Right.
You understand? What does the law come into play into this?
All right. So as it relates to what the law can and cannot do, once an offense is committed in what they're doing, then the person can be charged. We, under the Electronic Crimes Act, for example, it is an offense to share the private part, the private areas of an individual. So you take out your phone, you take pictures, you take videos of that individual's private areas, and for those who's wondering what are your private areas, would be the breast, the vagina, and the buttocks for the ladies, and the buttocks and the penis area for the gentlemen.
Even if it's consensual?
Even if consensual, yes. If it is that it is shared without the consent of either of the parties involved in the shooting of the video. Now, once that video is shared or that picture is shared, then you are culpable under the law. And then the law also says that every other person that shares is also culpable. So it means that once you just go ahead and reshare that information, you think it's funny, or you just want to defame the individual, so you share maliciously, then you too can be charged, because that is an offense.
And it doesn't even have to be malicious.
And exactly, you just go ahead and share because you see it's being shared over and over, you can be charged. And
I see this, I want to say that, I'm going to send it to my friend.
Exactly.
And my friend now says, well, I get that from GT.
So let me share it again.
Let me share it again. You understand?
Right? And then the other laws that can be broken. So you'd see persons on social media, and they think that because they're behind a screen, they can cause the obscenities, they can let go the threats, or they can even slander. What you would see happening is once there is a complaint, even though you're behind the screen, the criminal code still applies.
Okay.
So all the offenses that we can uphold in the physical, it can translate into the digital realm as well. So we want persons to keep in mind that it is not just you typing away and you feel that there is no repercussions for your actions. There are. And so persons have to keep that in the back of their minds, that you have to be a law-abiding citizen, whether you're in the digital space or in the physical space, because that's just the expectation of trial instead of Grenada curriculum.
Okay, folks may give the impression lately, well, I did it online, or I did it on the internet. Doesn't mean they can't touch me, or I can't be touched about it. But that's
totally not true.
That's not true. That's a no. You can be charged once an offense is committed.
And it has been done in the past.
Yeah, and it's happening all now. I remember my very, very first sitting in a court when I just came out as a police officer, and that was back in 2019. I went to Grenville Police Station, and it was a lover's quarrel. So boyfriend and girlfriend, they're together, things were nice, and during that moment they agreed to take pictures of themselves during their intimate moments. And when the relationship ended, the boyfriend or ex-boyfriend in that situation was upset, and he shared all of their intimate moments on social media. And it wasn't an easy fine. It's not like $5,000 he was charged. The court charged him $35,000 to be paid. And it was $35,000. And I think that is one of the offenses where I see the heftier fines coming in. Because if you get charged that amount now, if it is a repeat action, it only gets higher and higher. So persons have to take that in consideration. $35,000 is a car, and in some places a whole house. Yeah. So to say that you, in a moment of being upset, you just do something like that on social media, you know that there are serious repercussions for these actions.
It's important to be more emotionally intelligent in those kind of circumstances. Think about the far-reaching implications of your actions. It may seem simple, you're behind a screen and you say, but trust me. And something very concerning that I've learned recently, and probably Ms. Kuntain can attest to it. Things that you put online, you can get, even if you delete it, there are persons that are capable of retrieving it. So it's always there.
And so my screenshot fingers are like, they're right there, you understand? So as soon as I see something come out, in less than 0.11111 millisecond, I already have that. So even if you try to delete it is already there.
A lot of people have been doing is that they put it up for a minute or 30 seconds. The point is, there are persons that as soon as you put it up, if they subscribe to you, they get a notification instantly. And by the time
there are folks who are that quick in obtaining it, and then you may find out, well, I took it down already, but you haven't known that. That has gone for
20 copies of that around the island and even in the diaspora.
Tell me now, the impact this is having on society in general. The fake news and the misinformation. How is it affecting society, regular individual? How is it from the RGPF point of view? The information that you're receiving, I'm sure folks are complaining and calling about this information being thrown out about them or other individuals who they feel concerned about. How is that affecting society as a whole?
Well, I would say it's very detrimental to society, to persons' personal lives. Persons work hard to support their family, and sometimes the information that comes out, I don't want my son seeing something negative about me online and something that is not true at that. As you mentioned before, in terms of going into the job sector and working, and so your boss is scrolling through and he sees something about you, and sometimes you're up for that promotion coming, and because of that disturbing piece of information. And the very scary thing here that I've noticed from misinformation and disinformation is that regardless of if it's true or not, people still judge you.
It sticks.
And even though you were, for some reason, you may have gone through a process with it. So you may have gone through court and everything, and you've been.
The stigma is there.
The stigma remains with you.
And that's why in some cases, persons, even though the court rules, like in the case with the $35,000, that's what he had to pay the court as fines. When you then decide to get damages to the individual, the court take these things into consideration. So it may be $35,000 plus in total that you would have to pay the court. Yeah. And most recently, sorry, you'll go just now. Most recently, I was I don't really label it as being a victim, but I had a moment where an individual would have posted up some things about me on social media. I'm a social media butterfly. I like to see myself on social media, and minor celebrity. And the person used my picture, and they were posting things like RIP, and like RIP, and things about my family that weren't true. And and I'm going to speak here as a civilian, because at the time I'm reacting as a civilian. I was a little bit taken aback, because why would you say RIP? And then when I'm walking around the streets, person will be like, hey, I thought you dead in the girl. And yeah, even when I went to the station just yesterday, someone was like, RIP? You want RIP? And so persons don't understand. These are persons that are working with me, and they haven't seen me in 2 days. And they already have that mentality that something may have happened to me. So think about some persons internationally that will be seeing the RIP. They just believe that I'm gone. And so how does that affect persons? Sometimes you see persons get depressed. You would see persons that are unfortunate, but they're suicidal, because depending on the extent of the defamation, they don't see how they can reintegrate themselves into society, because as Copper Red rightfully says, once that stigma is there, no matter how much times you try to wash it away, sometimes it remains. And so it's something that impacts not just society and a whole, but it impacts individual. You'd never know how someone might react to that. Certain things you may do, you may cause persons to inflict harm on others. Because if I see something posted on social media about my daughter, who is 7 years old, I don't know in this moment how I would react as a parent, much less for somebody else who is not a police officer and have to maintain a level of law-abidingness, just a notch above everybody else.
Right. And one of the scary things, or not so much scary things, but one of the things that, in terms of accountability, the persons that have these large followings, that they disseminate the misinformation or disinformation rather on their victims, because you are a victim of the information if it's not true, is that when the truth comes to light, they don't come back and apologize. They don't say, I'm sorry, and
they move on to the other.
They move on to the other.
Exactly.
And people outside there, they don't care. Sometimes the only bit of information they see is what the person was accused of. Yeah. So they run with that. They tell their friends, and every friend have a friend, as we see.
Also concerning too, we see a lot of the political part of it has been exploited a whole lot of lately, especially via the social media. Things are saying things of folks who are in the politics and so forth. How concerned is the RGPF in relation to that? Or what could be done, if there's anything that could be done in relation to that? But we see folks are saying things about, especially in the political realm.
Yeah. I would say any form of defamation is a concern to the rugged and the police. Whether it be in the political arena, social, any aspect of society, any strata. What we've seen a lot happening in relation to misinformation is something called deepfake, and my IT expert here can really speak to that.
Disinformation.
So the deepfake is where I would take a picture of you, JT, and I would put you in an AI app and put some words of you saying that you don't like GBN. Yeah. Which is totally untrue. You love GBN. So we see that happening a lot in the political arena. Yeah. And persons have a right. And the Prime Minister can attest here, because he's an attorney, or he was an attorney, or still is an attorney.
Yeah, he is.
The persons have a right to take it to court if they want. If you can verify the source of the person creating that deepfake, you can take it to court, and for persons otherwise, you can take it to court. The police are always open to receiving reports and assisting in those investigations. So the police, we are at your service 24/7 in relation to those things.
Right. And what I want to say here as well is that sometimes, depending on the action, it may not end up to be something criminal as yet. So it hasn't reached the level of criminal, it hasn't reached a criminal level. But we have to make sure persons understand that we are in partnerships with institutions like CSOT. And when you hear CSOT, you can say CSOT without calling Mr. Dabrio. Because he helps, it's a partnership. So he helps to address things that aren't criminal as yet. And once it becomes criminal, that's where we then interject. And then you also have to understand that there are certain things that may not be criminal, but they may be illegal. And so we would direct you to how you can get civil redress, whether it means that you have to go through a lawyer as opposed to coming through the police. We'll be able to guide you. And that is something that persons sometimes don't understand. They think that police are unwilling to help. But we have to be able, how the law works is it gives us a set of rules that we have to operate within. And so if it's outside of that circle, it is not that we're not going to help, but we will direct you to the next best institution that will be able to offer assistance.
So the stages per se.
Exactly. So we will encourage persons, if you see something, and we've been seeing that a lot, tag us in it. Send us a private message, call and report it, because then we'll have the opportunity to investigate and determine which realm, which section or which institution has to address it. And sometimes when we're searching through the internet as well, because we do that, and we see something, we reach out and we say, hey, we observed this. Would you want to come in and give a statement, or can we move forward, or whatever the case may be? So it is not that we're just waiting for it to, waiting for you to bring it forward. We are also looking for these offenses as well.
The reason why I ask, because sometimes you see all these things being thrown out and been said, that you mentioned the Prime Minister, this individual, the opposition, and all these things, all this information being thrown out about them, and you see it continues to happen. So I'm wondering if the police are never really doing anything, if there's no penalty that the individual could get themselves, or trouble they could get, as for easier way of saying it, into by making these comments via the Facebook, and because it gets to a stage where folks feel it's their right to just say what they want.
The challenge with social media, and as again, Ms. Kutin can attest the same, is that sometimes it's very obvious who is posting it. Now, if I go on and I see Antonia Kutin posting something, it's very easy to get Miss Antonia, call her up, speak to her about it. If it continues, then we can go further. The challenge with social media is that a lot of persons create anonymous profiles. And then we would have to try and delve and try to find what's the source. And I believe I heard Miss Kutin talking about.
So let me just say a little something here. That it's not that we will not find you. And what's the name of the movie? There's a movie where he said there's a particular set of skills that I have. I'm going to find you. I'm going to think, what's the name of that movie? Oh my gosh, I can't remember. But if you remember that movie, tag us in the comments somewhere. But we do have a dedicated department, the Data Forensic Unit, that is dedicated to addressing cyber-related offenses. So it is not a department that you can complain to. You could just go to and make the complaint. But once you make your complaint to the nearest station or other department like CID, etc., they are going to get the assistance of that department to then do that type of investigation. So it is not that every police officer has all the tools available to them to be able to look at the different IP addresses and other technical terms that I'm not going to go through here because I don't want persons to wise up on our tactics. But they have the necessary set of skills in the back end to find you. So don't think that just because you're hiding behind a fake account that we would not be able to unravel who you are. I think where the difficulty would come in is if you are not in the island and we have to prosecute someone who's probably doing the thing from the States or from Cuba or something like that. But once you are within the trial and state,
the jurisdiction also plays a part of
exactly. But we do have partnering institutions like the RSS that we lean on if we have offenders from outside of Grenada that we can always go to and say, hey, there's somebody in, let's say, Trinidad or Jamaica or St. Lucia that we're looking for, and they'll be able to assist. But That's just the process. But the whole point is, don't think that just because you have a fake account that we will not find you. We may not find you the same day we'll find Redhead if he puts his name as Redhead.
Exactly.
But we will find you.
Right.
And in addition, I think that a lot of the resources that you would have to take to delve into that investigation, sometimes, for example, a lot of I've seen the web persons put the Prime Minister up, and it's visibly fake. You can see that the way his mouth is moving with the words, and so. And to me, like, a lot of them.
And then it takes them time to create it too, so you wonder why,
it's a waste. It
takes you time to create it.
As I mentioned earlier, as a way to mitigate dealing with misinformation, disinformation, you verify with a source. For example, we have GIS, Government Information System, that put out information. We have GBN that put out information. So you go to the news and you check that information and make sure that you have the correct information. Remember the movie was Taken by...
Taken, yes, Taken. That's a movie.
We're due for a break. Let's take that break when we come back. Of course, in the next segment, of course, we invite our listeners and viewers. I know they may have questions that just relate to, of course, misinformation and so forth that they may like to ask. I hope you take it to respond to. We take that break, folks. We're coming right back. Don't touch it out.
Coming up, crop overs already in the air, along with all the hype. They conquered the Caribbean. Now they're ready for the world. Solid financial support joins the battle versus severe medical conditions. There's absolutely everything you need and then some at this resort. It's all next on this station.
One of the things that I like about pediatrics is that it's never just about the child. It's also about family, extracurricular activities, sports, school, all of those things we get involved in. I think one of the nice things is also that it's about empowering families or giving them the knowledge that they need. It's actually about forming a community of people who support each other. We're in this parenting journey together.
Be viewing Caribbean Medical TV on this station.
Hey GBN family, we've got a brand new home on Facebook and you need to be there. Follow us now on Facebook at Grenada Broadcasting Network -GBN. Stay updated with the latest news, sports, entertainment, and everything Grenada. Don't miss out. Like, follow, and share. Grenada Broadcasting Network. Stay informed, stay ahead. First with the news, fast with the updates.
Got something to share?
Call us at 440-1252.
WhatsApp 405-3052 or 407-8458.
Or email gbnnews@gbn.gd.
GBN News, first, accurate, voted #1.
Like a freestyle, the lifeblood flowing mile by mile. It's legacy, a beat that don't stop like Bob Marley said. One love on top. The sewage water out of sight, but it's always wrong. Don't lose the light. From factories and wells so deep, corrupts mangroves and fish they weep. Grey water for the garden, keep it green. Save the cash and the earth gets clean. We use the water with a mindful mind. It's out of sight, but never far behind. In nature, the answers always flow. Like water running pure, the cycle grows. It renews itself, same drop, same beat. It's all good, man, you got the heat. Water flow. No clean water, no vibes to grow. Protect our water, protect our future.
Time to go.
Grenada, the time has come. It's the big showdown in the first ever Classic Lighted and the Communal Credit Union Invitational 2025. Come witness the Royal Grenada Police Force and His Majesty's prison officers take on the nation's busmen and women in an epic 4x1 relay. Then it's Flow versus DG Cell. And don't miss out, Nawasa, who will be flooding Grenada in the ultimate relay. All this and more, May 17th and 18th at the Kirani James Athletic Stadium. Adults $30, children $15. Season passes are available. It's a showdown like no other. Be there.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers. It's To The Point, Classic Radio, GBN TV. Folks, in this segment, before we wrap this morning, we are, of course, going to give the opportunity to our listeners and viewers opportunity to call in. You may have a question or two as it relates to the conversation in this segment. Let's take our first call. Caller, you're live. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, sir. Go right ahead, please.
It seems as if these people who are policemen who are now on your program are good people. But as far as I'm concerned, because of my experience, there are a lot of people in the force who are not good ones. They tend to want to flog people even in their own yard. I would give you an experience and you'll help me as to what to go about it.
Caller, is your question, is your conversation relating to what we have talking about this morning? Have you had the experience of where misinformation, fake news was something that you may have experienced along those lines?
Well, it seems so. I don't know.
Let's hear you, so. Let's hear you. And if you just get to the point so we can accommodate as much callers as possible.
What should I say? Should I say you're unbugging me?
Caller, let's have our next caller, 435-2041, 435-2041. Let's entertain another caller. I had a call from someone a while ago related. I want me to ask a question in terms of in acquired information with individual. Does the police have the authority, or could they? Is it possible that the police could obtain information from someone's, whether their phone or somewhere else? We say locally hack their phone or something like that. Does the police have the authority to do that?
All right. So earlier we spoke about the data forensic unit, and they are, as we indicated, our cyber forensic unit. And what would happen in cases where we think that there is information that can assist with a case that is contained within an electronic device, whether it be your computer, your cell phone, your tablet, etc., there will be a court order that will be granted from a magistrate or a high court, depending on the offense, depending on the situation, and they will give us the authority to then confiscate your device, and they will then access the device based on the court granted order.
Right.
And the court will then specify where they can go and what they can retrieve from the device. So it's not to say that just because you give us your device for a particular purpose, we're just going to go and scan through every little thing and find all your business and these things like that. We do have laws and regulations that govern the way we access and use the information that we retrieve from your device.
Okay, thank you so much. We do have another caller. Caller, you're live. Good morning.
Good morning, Dre, and good morning to you guys.
Good morning to you.
We speak about scammers like it's only in Nigeria or African countries they're from. But there were scammers in the Caribbean that people that go to work every day trying to scam people throughout the world. I'm listening to an interview from Europe, and the guy is a top scammer, and he was saying that how easy it is to scam people around the world. Mainly that maybe their name, their marriage, this and that. They have everything linked up with dates of the significant part of their life. Maybe their childbirth or maybe their birthday. And we need to encourage Canadians, start putting the password as the birthday, as the marriage date, as different things like that, because that's easy access for the scammers. They know that. They know that what people normally do. So we need to encourage our people not to use password close to the children birthday or things like that. Use something really, really technical so people can really find it, because it's very easy for scammers to come in Grenada here and rob all our money. I'm telling you. The way we do things there is very, very easy. So we need to put our people and encourage them to use different passwords that is difficult for people to really come across. Don't use their birthday or their marriage date or their children's birthday or their children's name and things like that is very easy to find.
All right, caller, thank you.
Very easy to find.
Thank you so much.
Just to add to what this caller said, very, very important information. He said a lot of people normally associate scammers with the Nigerians.
Yeah.
Now, there are scammers right here in your home. The person sitting next to you right now could be a scammer. There isn't a color associated with scammer or culture specifically associated with scammer. Probably there's a higher inclination towards it based on the country or so, but there isn't a color. It's very. I've worked at the airport for a lot of years, and you would be surprised. You cannot judge someone by the way they dress or the way they look. Sometimes the man that has on a slip and a short pants is the billionaire, and the man that has on the most chains is,
he relatively have nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah, he probably borrowed it.
That's why you should always be skeptical of the information you receive, regardless from who it's from. Don't be looking specifically for a Nigerian or a Ghanaian or a Vincentian or St. Lucian. It could be a Grenadian.
You never know. We do have another caller. Caller via WhatsApp. Good morning, you're live.
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me clear?
Loud and clear. Go right ahead, please, caller.
Yeah, I got two questions. One, how much money has the Grenadian population lost so far to misinformation and scam? And two, seeing that the RJPF, the Grenada Police Force, is a arm of the state, how do they treat with state-sponsored misinformation, especially around heightened times, such as elections, carnival, and all these various activities? Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much. Respond to the caller.
Thank you so much for your question, caller. Yeah, they were very good questions. The first one was what again?
How much money has been lost this time.
Right. Yeah. So we don't actually have a figure with us because, as I wanted to tell the other caller as well, normally we have programs where we speak specific to fraud, scams, and things like that. And because it wasn't the main focus of today's discussion, we did not get details specific to scams and stuff like that. But I am sure if you continue listening on for these programs, because we have a few more coming the year, we have a long year ahead of us still, on one of those programs we will specifically touch on scams, how to protect yourself, etc. And we will walk with the figures so you'll be able to get a better breakdown as it relates to how much was lost to scams. And as it relates to your second question, we did somewhat touch on it, but I guess we did not say it was broadly the practice that we use despite the government entity, despite the fact that it comes from the state or whether it's a civilian, but the same methods that we use to investigate, to address any form of misinformation or disinformation applies across the board. And I hope you were listening earlier because I didn't want to take all the time to go through all the points that we raised earlier.
There so you can always replay it and look.
Okay, great. We do have another caller. Caller, you're live. Good morning.
Yes, hi. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And to your panel. I know that for subject to correction, by the way, that there are some more like the FBI will have certain buzzwords that they will look for, like bomb or of the sort. Do we have that in Grenada here in such that if we notice that these words like drugs or something like that, or drop-off points and something like that we are able to pick up on, or something like that the authorities pick up on, and to be able to be, in other words, then preemptive in their actions in this regard.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much.
Caller, I like you. I like you, caller. I'm so sad I don't know who you are, but just if you see me ever, remember I said I like you. Yes, on a daily basis, we do have a set of keywords. I'm not going to disclose what they are at this stage. And we have our dedicated team that would regularly search the different platforms for these keywords. It is something that is very important because a lot of the times persons don't necessarily tag us. Let's say, for example, on Facebook, there's something happening and they would just probably type in RGPF because they aren't a friend of ours, or they haven't liked our page or anything like that. So it doesn't pop up on our feed. But because of the urgency of the matter, we do have words that we will either populate. I can say the RGPF is one, for example. Yeah. So even if they just type in RGPF, we will look for those little keywords and we will be on those matters. But yes, I like you.
Yeah, just to add to what Ms. Coutinho was saying, Carla, as you said, the RGPF has buzzwords. Locally, what we have when we're investigating to see if a crime has been committed is something called the points to prove. Mm-hmm. So in those points to prove, those would be the elements of what make up a crime. So I would assume that those words are a part of our mandate in terms of...
He says assume because he don't know what we do.
That's our specialty.
All right. So, of course, WPC Coutinho, Caporetted, of course, we got to that stage of the moment we have to take a wrap for today's program. I've been very, very interesting program. This is the kind of program I could have again converse with you all morning. Yeah. But you know, I'm not sure if any other bits you want to throw out to folks out there, maybe that last bit of encouragement, folks, to be more concerned in terms of how they disperse information, especially once they know it's not true, they just hear something. It doesn't always mean that you should just put it out there. Anything else you want to throw before we take a wrap?
Just to conclude, as I mentioned earlier, persons, social media content creators, persons with a large following, just to stress that you have a fundamental responsibility. You have persons in your care. Think of people as your children. What you want for your children, you want the best for them. And you have that power at your fingertips to build lives, to condemn lives, to give someone a job, to help someone with a job, to help them to lose a job, if that's your intent. And as I mentioned earlier, let the intent to be for all of us to be valuable contributors of society. Let's work together, the police and the community. Let's work together to achieve a beautiful Grenada, a safe Grenada, a Grenada that is characterized by we are known as a nice people, a lovely people. As I said, I worked at the airport and people always say friendly, loving, smiling people, always willing to help. As Socrates said, the great philosopher, question everything. Information that you have at your fingertips, question it. Check. Make sure and check the GBN news. Make sure that the news is correct that you have in, because lives can be destroyed. You have that fundamental responsibility. Thank you, and I hope that you listen.
All right.
Yeah. And just last, we are on social media, so check us out, please. If you have additional questions that we weren't able to address today, you can always send us a message on Facebook. You can always look out for us on Instagram. We have newly launched our YouTube channel, and we are on other platforms as well. So just reach out to us, call your nearest station if you have a complaint, but please don't let something happen, you feel uncomfortable about it, and you don't report it. Even if it's not an offense, it may be something that we can still assist you with. So please reach out.
Great. So once again, I want to thank you both for coming in and of course shared information this morning. Definitely great information shared. And I know our listeners and viewers have certainly learned a lot. And may make a difference in their approach. You may start seeing that happening. Until we have another, of course, opportunity to do this again. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you so much.
Hey, folks, that's where we can take a wrap for this edition of To The Point. Join me again tomorrow for another edition. Have a good one, folks. That's where we say goodbye.